It's good to be home. Yes. They say home is where the heart is. And that is true. But there are places on this earth that remain home, even when the heart that made it a home ceases to beat. Those are special places. Places I think that some of you know and love. Some of you can still go to those places, or you live there. Some cannot. All of them are thin places, as you may know, where the veil between what was, what is, and what is to come is sheer enough for us to catch a glimpse of what was good, what could be improved, what was sad, and what we loved about that place in the time that was given to us. In those places, the language of memory and hope is real, and it's enchanting. Home, then, is often where we make it, even though there are places on this earth that remain home long after we left them. I came back from such a place on Tuesday, traversing lake and prairie in a treasure truck that the Penske family had loaned us. I journeyed in stages with my sister Meredith, dropping off the wares and sundries that made our house a home in her home. Mom's china, even irises from her garden made the journey west. And somehow knowing that she touched those things keeps the memory of her alive. Among the dusty boxes of children's books that held every copy of the Berenstain Bears, a host of Teddy Ruxpin shorts. I see some people know those. No, not all. And of course, the tales of Babar the Great. There we go. I found a familiar book, and with it, a familiar face. It's my first Bible, complete with Jesus as the Good Shepherd on the cover, and what I assume to be that one sheep who tried to get away around his neck. If I open up the inside of the cover, it reads, "To Nicholas, September 27th, 1981. It was then that I realized that the first stories I ever heard were the stories of the Good Shepherd. And my mom saved it for me. I've had several shepherds in my life, as you have. Some of them good. Some of them hired hands. All of them not quite like Jesus, but some that we have loved fiercely. And as much as we all have been compared with sheep in our lives, some of us goats, I think it's remarkable that most of us at one point in our life find ourselves as shepherds. There's one shepherd that I knew a few years back who had a rather large flock in central Georgia, who was the Bishop of Atlanta. And he told me something that I've never forgotten when it comes to sheep and the role of a shepherd, especially when it comes to leaving the 99 to go after the one. And I think that's an important bit of information for each of us, because we all know who the 99 are to us, and we all kind of know that one. That spring he looked to us and he said, shepherding is about flocks, not sheep. Shepherding is about flocks, not sheep. This is where it got good. He looked at us and he says, hear me now. I know that sheep are necessary to create flocks. It doesn't take a degree in animal husbandry to realize that. But make no mistake about it. Your vocations, and I assume that he means all of us here, your vocations will have you tending to sheep. But your job as shepherds is to guard and guide the flock. And when you find yourself on occasion in search of the one, remember that in finding them and returning them, you are not serving them only. You are serving the flock. For we are to go after the one to restore the wholeness of the 99. The one is to be returned to restore the wholeness of what was lost. And this idea of wholeness, right? And with it, a deep hope of its realization came at me this week from an email from a friend. And perhaps it was because to hope for wholeness, you first have to come to the realization that something has been lost. And that sounds simple enough. But there are times in our lives, I think all of us could agree, that it might be easier for us to go on without the one. Or when, because of circumstance, it's impossible to restore the physicality of the one because they have gone on from us. And that's tough. Attrition rarely serves the idea of wholeness in the former scenario. In fact, discarding the one is a really different approach to creating and maintaining community. Right? I think this maxim is true for all of us, even when we are all watching out for wolves. And yet, when Jesus speaks of laying down his own life for the flock, what are we to think about except loss? Who will go after the shepherd? Perhaps that is how the disciples felt that quiet Saturday. And perhaps that is how some of us feel, those who are left to remain. But in the space of all those yesterdays, Easter remains ever new. Restoration is somehow very close to us on these occasions. And wholeness, though different, fills us all who seek it with memory. And how we live out of the richness of that memory, instead, out of the poverty of our loss, determines much about what we think about the sacrifice of the Good Shepherd. And strangely, Easter gives the tragedy of loss a kind of beauty. For is there anything more beautiful than to be known and loved anyways by a shepherd who would choose death on a cross that all might live? Beauty isn't all about loveliness, my friends. Beauty is about a more rounded, substantial becoming. Beauty, in an Easter sense, is about an emerging fullness, a greater sense of grace and elegance, a deeper sense of depth, and also a kind of homecoming for the enriched memory of our unfolding life, even in the wake of what we leave behind.